Alrighty, how's everybody doing? Tetractys Institute of Metaphysics and Evolution. I'm going to discuss today a little bit more about cycles, what it means when they use that term. Cycles are pretty, depends upon whether you have some background maybe in modern physics or anything of this night, to understand the difference between waveform and particle movement. We're talking about consciousness. Consciousness in these cycles, whether they are global, cosmic, or individual, are something that constantly flux. Therefore, like a heartbeat, it has points where it rises and descends like anything else. When we were a little bit that I did on the Mayan calendar was dealing with a lot of these cycles because some of these cycles stretch for thousands of years. Other times they are within an hour of ourselves individually, the way that they have a tendency to change or alter at some degree our level of thought process or our activities by our thoughts. Because we have the question of where thoughts come from. Edgar Cayce, who was once referred to as America's sleeping prophet, the father of metaphysics to some degree, and holistic thinking, basically quoted that consciousness at its greatest degree is coming from what's known, we refer to as the fourth dimension. And it is a cosmological attempt of communication. Why? Because the very ether of a lot of what we walk through, breathe, exude from, and within is filled with information. That's information that some of it has been there since, we can say, the beginning or dawn of time. But at other times we can also say we put information into that mix. We did so with actions and activities that and thought processes and relationships and friends and jobs and all of this over the past lives. Now, some people will have a problem if I try to mention anything about reincarnation, but I would caution you to remember one thing here, and I've said this before. If you literally believe you only have one physical existence in an earth plane, and you're born from your mother, from a womb, and then you end up in the dirt, and that's all that God gives you, 80 to 120 years, sometimes only 8 hours for a child. Although the children, we are willing to accept the fact that they will have an acceptance within heaven. See, because they are still sinless, even though our Bible tells us we're born into it, you know. So it's not an escape at that level. But to have only that much time to try to develop self is cruel on God's part. And I'll leave it at that, basically because the God I believe in, the consciousness that I believe in, the divine essence of everything that goes into who we are as we've been created and what we are passing through in order to get to another place. And trust me, I do believe we will get there by whatever means necessary, depending on our ability to perceive ourselves. Okay, and that's what these cycles are about. But regardless of all that, yes, I definitely do believe in reincarnation and the fact that our attempts to reach finality, or what we might perceive as some kind of perfection or illumination, enlightenment, we are becoming ascended masters, whatever. The point being, and excuse me there, that was a phone call, but okay. At any rate, the point being is that the consciousness that is driving this already has an intent set for the entire universe, let alone ourselves as individuals. And so these cycles, as they are fading in and out or moving at particular degrees to respond, affect our lives as they come back around, is basically driving fear or sustainability of the self and the world that we are existing in. So when the Mayans spoke about these cycles having a night-day type of environment to them, that's not necessarily to say that the night ones are worse than the day. events over a period of 5,120 years, 5,200 years, as some of these Baktun cycles followed. 144,000 days is measured into that Baktun measurement. Those had shifts in it, and like I said before, they had shifts in it that are no longer registered or marked by any of the Shalom Balam priests. Essentially, the calendrics that go into the Aztec Mayan calendar are stagnant, dead, almost useless. Outside of the fact that they do represent, traditionally, a good deal of what this consciousness and its cycles is capable of doing or breeding through humanity. Because we either listen to our devils or we listen and accept the voices of our angelic side. And all that being said, too, means our choices are driving a good deal, if not everything, behind what these cycles consist of, globally, individually, cosmically. And to have an understanding of how those cycles will drive us, or how we are actually in, very much so, in the capacity of altering them, fulfilling them, turning them around. We give them the 180 degrees of where it is we think we were going, because we suddenly come to the realization it was not serving self, and it was not serving self. It cannot ever possibly serve others. So you need to, we, as a level of beings, need to square away ourselves before our attempts to do anything to someone else. This is why love, relationships, job environments, family environments have as many problems as they do. Why? We speak more than we listen. We think more than we act. We have a tendency to ignore what our heart might be trying to tell us. Mostly because we do not have a developed sensitivity to ourselves. We are so busy in our world running around looking for conveniences and contraptions to supposedly make our lives easier, and yet all they do is complicate them. We are no longer using papyrus and a stylus. We are using iPhones, computers. We don't take the time. It took a long time for scribes to write out things. It took a long time to pass through those things, make sure its translations were as correct as possible, although great mistakes occurred in a lot of manuscripts. And we won't go into that right now. However, because of that passing on of information, consciousness has that same kind of difficulty whispering in our ear and having it come out the other side the same way as we would give it to others, let alone hold on to it as some kind of definition or whatever for ourselves. So these are things that are important right now, as that we need to kind of come to recognition, self-recognition of what it is we have allowed to happen. Politically, religiously, economically, all these subdivisions of what our consciousness attacks or creates have a lot to do with internal combustion of our own emotions, our own creeds, our own dogmas. And this is unfortunate, see, because where love needs to have some kind of level of acceptance, our egos are very good at trying to individualize who and what we are, so much so that love is not allowed to exist, see, because there's nothing beyond ourselves from the ego's point of view. It is a me world. I, we does not exist. Our is a fading term. Collectively, we are beginning to change that. If the meek are to inherit the earth, then it is the quiet essences of our hearts and minds that will eventually subdue the din of our unnatural selves. That noise, that static that is created by individuality must cease and must find congruent levels of conscious thought. And this is beginning to take place. I totally believe it's beginning to take place. I think for some of us as natives, when we began to talk about range-old children, we were talking about the blending of ideals, concepts, perceptions, bloodlines, the mingling of humanity has got to come to a certain point where it realizes we all bleed the same. We basically have the same skeletal structures. We are a variety of DNA and its contraptions, unfortunately. But because technology wants to attack that, and it is, it's attempting to herd and cull us. These are parts of the ego that are very strong in some of these conscious levels. We have to realize that ego and conscious and divine consciousness are in a battle all the time. So it doesn't matter whether you are in a night or day phase. It does have a lot to do with the masculinity that needs to fade while feminine energies are beginning to rise. Those feminine energies aren't anything that's big about women. Those feminine energies have everything to do with consciousness and its ability to break down its logic by maintaining an emotive side. See, men have this. Most men just ignore it. They ignore it because they see it as a weakness rather than a strength. So if there are men watching this, you really do need to learn and accept the fact it's okay to cry, to laugh, to love, to embrace. It's okay to be a man. Because women are not necessarily stronger. Men are not necessarily weaker. Although we transpose those ideas because we have some kind of society that teaches us that that's the way it should be. It's very egotistical, chauvinistic, and driven by power, control, a lot of greed, a lot of want, no necessity. And so this is where it's tough for some of us. And there are women right now who are suffering because their emotive side is not carrying them through. It's breaking them down. It's forcing them into some very painful experiences for themselves because they're being persecuted. And those persecutions are driven once again by that odd consciousness that just seems to want to control, makes demands, intimidates, and does nothing more than want to harness and break down everything that you have as a soul. The soul is incredibly strong. Don't forget me. Don't forget that. Never let that go. Your soul is your greatest, not weapon, but power. Gifts that are given to the soul are things that allow us to have certain strains of strength, focus, our abilities as humans that drive us before and above things. It's the things that allow us to break ourselves free. So when masculine and feminine energy get mentioned, do not think that this means all men are bad, all women are good, because that's not necessarily true. Any more than women are bad and men are good. It's not a question of being good or bad. It's a question of being reasonable, consistent, focused, giving. It's a question of acceptance. And that is one of my most used words in a lot of ways, because acceptance is another power, an essence of the soul that has the ability to equalize, harmonize, balance, synchronize. We're learning these lessons the hard way, see, because we're now pinned between a very large rock and a very small place, Earth. We need to love each other. The consciousness is there. The consciousness is waiting. The consciousness is passing through us as best as it can. What we receive and what we use will either become our blessings or our curse, not only to ourselves, but to others. Takuya, awesome. Great Spirit bless you. Carry on and into your week. Feel good about something and give it away.